So, thank you. Please welcome Senator Harris.
Hi, guys. It's great to be in Henderson. Hi, everybody. Hi. Joyce, I cannot thank you enough. Not only for the support, but for your leadership. The work that you and your colleagues have been doing, but the work of your leadership in the Nevada State House has been extraordinary. I was honored to join you and hang out with you for a little while in Carson City. But what this state legislature accomplished this last session is extraordinary in terms of its leadership, national leadership, and you're at the front of the line, so thank you, Joyce. Thank you. If we can hear it for our leaders, all of them, thank you. And this is what represents the best of who we are as a country, guys. Like, look around. This is what we are about. We are about understanding the strength of our nation is in the people. In the people, and for the people, and by the people. This is the strength of who we are. So, there you go. And we're all here for one reason, one clear reason, which is we love our country. We love our country. So I'll get right into it. I'm going to share with you a couple of my thoughts and some of my ideas and plans, and then I'm going to pass the microphone around because I'll start off by just saying I fully intend to win this election. I fully intend to win. And a measure of success will not only be that, but for me, that at the end of this process, a measure of our success will be that we are relevant. And one of the best ways to ensure that, especially at this phase of the campaign, is for me to be able to be in these moments of community and everyone coming together where I can listen as much as I talk. So that's why we're going to have this conversation after. But for now, I'll just share with you some of my thoughts, and then I want to hear from you. So where are we? Well, we are at a moment of inflection in the history of our country. This is an inflection moment. This is a moment in time that is requiring us each as individuals and collectively to look in a mirror and ask a question. That question being, who are we? And I think we all know that part of the answer to that question is we are better than this. We are better than this. So this then becomes a moment that we must fight for the best of who we are, and fight we will. And in these moments that cause us to really be concerned about where this is all heading, I'd ask us to remember that this fight for the best of who we are is not new to us. This is a fight we're prepared to have. This is a fight we've had before. This is a fight about fighting for the future and the best of who we are. And as Americans, we're always good for that fight. We're always into that fight, right? You know, I think about it in the context of the family in which I was raised. I was raised by a bunch of fighters. My parents met when they were students at the University of California, Berkeley in the 1960s. When they were active in the civil rights movement. So my sister Maya and I, we joke, we grew up surrounded by a bunch of adults who spent full time marching and shouting about this thing called justice, right? And, you know, in fact, you know, many of the heroes of that moment were the lawyers, you know, people like Thurgood Marshall and Charles Hamilton Houston and Constance Baker Motley, and these people who knew the skill of the profession of law to translate the passion from the streets to the courtrooms of our country, and to do the work we know must constantly be done of reminding folks of that great promise we articulated in 1776, that we are all and should be treated as equals. In fact, in large part, that's why I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. But I come from a family of fighters. My mother, my sister and I were raised by our mother. Our mother was all of 5 feet tall. But if you ever met her, you would have thought she was 7 feet tall. And she was the kind of parent who, you know, she raised us and said, look, you will be judged and should be judged, and your life should be judged based on how you impact others. What you do to lift up others. It is so much more than what you do for yourself. It is what you do for those around you. My mother raised me. She said, Kamala, you may be the first to do many things. Make sure you're not the last. My mother said, don't you ever let anybody tell you who you are. You tell them who you are. And our mother was the kind of parent who, if you ever came home complaining about something, our mother would look at you with a straight face, maybe one hand on her hip, and she would say, well, what are you going to do about it? So I decided to run for president of the United States. There you go. There you go. So let's talk for a moment about the current occupant of the White House. But we must. Context for this moment. Let's talk about that. So this is a fellow that came into office on a campaign that was about Make America Great Again, which caused a lot of us to ask, well, again, for whom exactly? It caused a lot of us to realize, again, that sounds like going backward. So what are we talking about? Back before the Voting Rights Act? Back before Roe v. Wade? Back before the Civil Rights Act? Back before federal minimum wage? Because we're not going back. We're not going back. He came into office saying he was going to help working families. Everybody from farmers to auto workers. And then what did we witness? His fragile ego causes him to conduct trade policy by tweet in a unilateral way, such that right now I'm spending a lot of time in Iowa in addition to Nevada, spent a lot of time in South Carolina, spent a lot of time in New Hampshire. Well, in Iowa, right now, because of his so-called trade policy, we've got farmers looking at bankruptcy. They've got soybeans rotting in bins. Because you see, over the last decade and more, they cultivated a market in China, which has now been cut off from them. We're looking at the fact, I was just in Michigan yesterday, that as many as 300 auto workers by the end of the year may be out of a job. Because of this so-called Trump trade policy that I call the Trump trade tax, American families right now are spending $1.4 billion more a month in everything from shampoo to washing machines. He came in making a whole lot of promises and betrayed a whole lot of people. And so, you know, when the pundits out there start comparing 2020 to 2016, I'm going to tell you guys, Henderson, 2020 will not be 2016. It will not be 2016. So, we know it is time to turn the page. It's time to turn the page. And one of the best ways we're going to do that is to successfully prosecute the case against 4 more years of Donald Trump. And we're going to need a prosecutor to do that. And let me tell you, we've got a rap sheet. We've got a rap sheet. We got a good rap sheet. Because let's look at it. What do we have? What's the evidence in this case? Well, we could talk about a tax policy that benefits the top 1% and the biggest corporations in this country. Said he was going to come in and help working families. Tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations, to the point that last year, 60 of the biggest corporations in America paid no taxes. Who here paid no taxes? What's on that rap sheet? Well, we can look at the fact that there's been a policy about putting babies in cages and separating them from their parents in the name of border security, when in fact what it is a human rights abuse being committed by the United States government. And the list goes on and on. So it's time to turn the page. But I'll also say this. Our campaign is about that because it's an obvious point. Dude gotta go. That's an obvious point. That's right. And after turning the page, it's time to write the next chapter. It's time to write the next chapter. And so the next chapter has to be about the America we believe in. The America we believe in. So let's talk about the America we believe in. And we're here in this beautiful elementary school. The children are going to start coming back in 9 days. Let's talk about the America we believe in for our children. In the America we believe in for our children, they will not have to come to school, our elementary, middle, and high school students, and endure a drill during which they're taught about how they should crouch in a corner or hide in a closet in the event that there is a mass shooter roaming the hallways of their school. In the America we believe in, we recognize that this is causing trauma to our babies who should be here learning, but are worried about if they're focused on the teacher in the front of the classroom, somebody coming through the door in the back of the classroom might cause them harm. And I'm telling Nevada what you already know. 1 October. So here's the thing. In the America we believe in, we will recognize this has to end. We will recognize that when those babies come home at night, those elementary, middle, high school students, when they come home at night and they sit down for dinner with their family and they ask their parents, why'd we have to have that drill? Their parents have to say, of course, well, it's because there are supposed leaders in Washington, D.C. who have failed to have the courage to reject a false choice, which suggests you're either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want to take everyone's guns away. Supposed leaders in Washington, D.C., who have failed to have the courage to agree. Fine if you want to go hunting. But we need reasonable gun safety laws in our country, including universal background checks and a renewal of the assault weapons ban. So in the America we believe in, here's what I'm prepared to do. When elected, I will give the United States Congress 100 days to pull their act together on this and put a bill on my desk for signature. And if they do not, I am prepared to take executive action to require a comprehensive background check requirement. Because you know what? Guess what? You might want to know before someone can buy a lethal weapon if they've been found by a court to be a danger to themselves or others. You might want to know before someone can buy a lethal weapon if they've been convicted of a crime that resulted in violence to another human being. You might just want to know that. Reasonable gun safety laws, an executive action requiring background checks. Further, I will require the ATF to take the licenses of gun dealers who violate the law. Here's what you should know, Henderson. 90% of the guns used in crime are connected with just 5% of the gun dealers. We need enforcement. And 3, I am prepared by executive action to ban the importation of assault weapons into our country. Because it's time to take action. It's time to take action. And here's the thing, just to put this in further context. Because, one might ask, well, why are we waiting for Congress to act? Maybe they're waiting for a tragedy. Nope. You know that. Someone might ask, well, maybe we're waiting for a good idea. Nope. All the good ideas have been had. Many of the people on the debate stage have a really good idea. I'm supporting them all. We don't lack for good ideas. We lack for action. It's time to take action in the America we believe in. So we're here at this school. So let's talk about the America we believe in. In the America we believe in, we will agree that our teachers do God's work and we are not paying them their value, and we will correct for that. So I've been traveling our country all over the place, and I cannot tell you the number of teachers I've met who are working 2, sometimes 3 jobs. I've met teachers who are working 4 jobs, by the way. 2, if not 3 jobs. Teachers in America, 94% of them in our public schools are coming out of their own pocket to help pay for school supplies. Teachers on average make 11% less than similarly educated professionals. And here's the thing. There are only 2 groups of people raising our children. Parents, often with the assistance of grandparents and aunties and uncles, and our teachers. But we are not paying them their value. And for me, this is kind of personal. My first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God rest her soul, attended my law school graduation. Yeah, but here's the thing. Many of us have a similar story of some teacher along the way who convinced us we were special. We weren't particularly special. But they told us we were, and we believed them. Right? Which put us on a path to being here together at this moment under one roof, making a decision about who will be the next president of the United States. So here's what we're going to do in the America we believe in. We are, for the first time in our nation's history, going to close the teacher pay gap by a federal investment to do that. And here, and this is the thing, here in Nevada, as you heard from the senator, it will be $15,000 a year. So let's put that in context. In most places, $15,000 a year is a year's worth of mortgage payments. $15,000 a year is a year's worth of grocery bills. $15,000 a year means putting a significant dent in student loan debt, which is one of the greatest barriers to our students coming out and joining a profession for which they have a passion. And to put a fine point on this issue, I strongly believe you should judge a society based on how it treats its children. And one of the greatest extensions of love and expressions of love that a society can extend toward its children is to invest in their education and, by extension, their teachers. Let's talk about the America we believe in. I see so many veterans here and those who have given service and risked so much for so many of us that you may never have met, and we may not have even known your name. So let's talk for a moment about the America we believe in the context of the role and the importance of the role of Commander-in-Chief. The Commander-in-Chief in the America we believe in understands that one of her most important responsibilities is to concern herself with the security of our nation and homeland. Instead of what we have seen in a so-called commander-in-chief, when it comes to the fact of Russia's interference in the election of the President of the United States, who prefers to take the word of the Russian president over the word of the American intelligence community. A commander-in-chief who, when it comes to an American student who was tortured and later died, prefers to take the word of a North Korean dictator over the word of the American intelligence community. That on the subject of a journalist who was assassinated, a journalist who had American credentials, prefers to take the word of a Saudi prince over the word of the American intelligence community. We need a new commander-in-chief. So, I just didn't see this coming. But there's so many more things to talk about, but I want to do it in the context of any questions or comments you have. But I do want to close my comments by saying this. You know, over the last 2 years and some months, you know, many of us have been really worried about where this is all heading and what this all means. Many of us have been throwing objects at that inanimate object called a television, you know, going through individual and group therapy about it all. But here's what I want to leave you with, among many things I hope, but here's what I want to leave you with. It is really important in our march toward 2020 that we remember one of the greatest strengths about who we are as a nation and as a people is we, by our very nature, are aspirational. We are a nation that was founded on noble ideals. The ideals that were present when we wrote the Constitution of the United States and all its amendments, and the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, and those words we spoke in 1776, that we are all and should be treated as equals. We are aspirational. We are also clear-eyed. We've not yet reached those ideals. But the strength of who we are is we fight to get there. We fight to get there, so fight we will, and fight we must, knowing this is a fight that is born out of optimism. This is a fight that is not born out of knowing and believing in what can be, unburdened by what has been. This is a fight that is not only for the soul of our country, this is a fight that is born out of love of country, and this is a fight we will win. We will win. Let's take some questions. You're going to moderate? Okay.
Good evening, and thank you, Senator, for your remarks. I think it was that fight that inspired me to become a public school teacher here in Las Vegas, Nevada. It was that fight that motivated me to run at 22 years old for the Nevada State Legislature. Woo! And win Assembly District 3.
And win.
When I made the decision to come to Nevada and run for our assembly, I'm sorry, I grew up in Nevada. When I ran for assembly in Nevada, it was because I wanted to make a real difference in my community and in my Nevadans' lives, in my students' lives. And that includes making sure that we have the very best education system for every single student in Nevada, regardless of their zip code.
That's right.
This past legislative session, we made great improvements to Nevada's education system, but we still have a lot of work to do. There is more we can do for our students. There's more we can do for our teachers, our schools, and our families across Nevada and across this country. It's important for presidential candidates to visit Nevada. and we appreciate it, but they gotta go further. They need to talk directly to Nevadans about the issues that we care about and those issues that are keeping us up at 3 a.m.
That's right.
There's a lot of issues that keep me up at 3 a.m. And most of them are my kids. I like to call them my kids. I have over 100 kids, they're my students. This is why this discussion is so important. And I'm so glad that we are able to have you with us today to talk to us about your plans for education. But Senator Harris is also here to listen to our concerns and get to know our community here today. I'd really like to thank you, Senator, for joining us today. And I look forward to continuing to discuss education policy and other matters that impact Nevada with you at a later date. Senator, this is your first question for tonight.
Okay.
Clark County School District is the 5th largest district in the country, and there's a lot of inequality between public schools in Clark County. We know as educators, and even my students know, which schools have it better off. So what is your plan to do specifically for teachers and students that are serving in those underserved schools?
Yeah, that's great. And thank you for your leadership and all of the success and the voice that you are bringing to this issue. So a number of things. One, about the teacher pay issue. It's very real. I'm meeting teachers around the country who are not only working 2 and 3 jobs, but leaving this profession for which they have a passion because they simply can't afford to do it. And so part of the issue, especially in some of our communities that are harder to reach because they're rural, for example, or are just more challenging because there's just so fewer resources that those teachers have to do so much more to compensate. My teacher pay plan also takes that into account. So for those teachers and those individuals who are going to teach in those harder to serve communities, they actually will be paid even more because I want to create incentives that are not only about retention of teachers, but recruitment of teachers into the profession. There's also the piece that's about just, frankly, the way that we fund school districts is just really upside down. It really is, because here's the thing. The way that we fund school districts, just generally speaking, is that it's based on the tax base of that community. So guess what that means? The richest people get the greatest resources, and then, working families get the fewest resources and often are the highest need. So what we also have to do is change the way that we're doing funding, and that's part of my intention, is to look at how we're funding in terms of the federal component of this. But it also has to be about supporting the states to do to reform in Nevada, and again, your state legislature is doing such an incredible job around looking at local funding formulas that take into account the specific needs of specific school districts. So for example, I know that folks are looking at, measuring, for example, well, how many foster children are in that school district? How many children are in that school district that, that where the homes, there's been the foreclosure crisis has hit it. Nevada was hit so hard, California was hit so hard. So looking at the actual dynamic at place in specific school districts. So to your point, the kind of education you get is not a function of the zip code in which you live. And that's a large part of what we need to do. But overall, it's been a long time since we have created a national priority around public education. And, I think we all know that but for the education or those teachers or those individuals who invested in us, we just wouldn't be here. And if you talk about the one thing that is a determinant of where we're going to end up, among many, in the blessing of a family and a community, it is about the schools and the kind of resources that school has, especially at our youngest age. There is also the issue of what we need to do around universal pre-K, which I am also a proponent of. We also need to have affordable childcare, which is a big issue. There is also the issue of what we need to do around supporting, I could go on and on, supporting families, including the many grandparents who these days are helping to raise children even after retirement and having a very difficult time doing it because they planned for their retirement that did not include that plan of raising their grandchildren. And so there is that piece of it, and I can go on and on with the details of it. But it has to be a priority for us, and it is a priority for me. I grew up in a community and a family that just focused on its children. For a large part of my life, I had to my mother, and then a second mother to me. Her name was Mrs. Shelton, and she was originally from Louisiana. Her husband, Arthur, was from Arkansas, and like a wave of folks from the South who moved to California, they moved there. And Miss Shelton ran a nursery school, and we actually lived on the apartment above the nursery school. And in my entire life, it was either being nurtured by a family and a community or being surrounded by children. And truly, the greatest gift that we can give to ourselves, much less to anyone else, is to invest in the education of our children. There's just no question about it. So thank you.
Hi, thank you for having me. My question, sorry. So violence in our school is becoming a reality we students face every day. Earlier this year at my school, Aubrey High School, 2 of my classmates were arrested for making racial threats on social media and threatening to shoot up the school. My question is, what will you do to keep students like me safe?
Yeah. So I want that you are going to be safe every day. And I want that all our children are going to be safe every day, and you can just focus on the joy of your youth and focus on your schoolwork and focus on your dreams for what the future looks like. And I know that is not the case for far too many of our young people. So, let's start with the fact that, one of the first orders of business for me is going to be putting in place a Secretary of Education that is not Betsy DeVos. Who because let's unpack that for a moment, if you'll indulge me. Aside from the whole grizzly bear piece, right? It's about on the issue of school safety, saying they're going to put guns in the hands of teachers. Our teachers don't want guns, they want raises. The idea that we are going to militarize our schools, it just fails to get the point. So there is that. There is about putting resources. One of my intentions is to also put a nurse in every school. Because here's the thing. There's so much, so for many of us, we had a nurse in our schools, right? How many in your elementary school had a nurse in your school? Look at this. Look at this. Who is under 20 here who had a nurse in their school? You see what I'm saying? Look, I think there was not even 5. It's like, yes, right? Wow. So let's talk about the specific points, right? This an obvious point, nurse in school, but it also has to be about running a Department of Education at the federal level that understands what schools are supposed to do and what teachers are supposed to do and what's actually supposed to happen in a public school. And it's supposed to be about education and nurturing our children and attending to their needs, understanding that they live a 360 life just like any one of us, and we need to pay attention to those things. The other piece about this is, because this needs to be discussed also, let's all be clear that over the last few decades, there has been a shift toward putting resources into the privatization of education, and I will stand in the way of that every step of the way. Because you can track it. You can track it and see. As families who have means and wealth started putting their kids in private schools and taking all the resources with them. And we have to shift back to saying we want a robust public education system. And I say that, yes, on the heels of talking about a Betsy DeVos, because what we have seen under this administration is an effort to privatize education at every level, not to mention privatizing detention centers and prisons and all of that. And so that's part of it. And then the school safety piece is also about recognizing that we've got to get resources into communities in a way that understands that we are overlooking the needs of so many communities, and They are suffering as a result. And that's where also a large part of my agenda is to work with mayors, to work with local officials, and to address those issues. But the safety issue is fundamental, and it is a starting point, because I don't want that you go to school and you worry about anything other than, did you study hard enough for that test? Yeah.
Thank you, Senator. So at this time, we would like to begin the town hall portion of this. So we're going to go ahead and select a few people for questions.
I saw you first, so the woman in the white.
A mic is coming to you. There you go.
My name is Sonia Lord Ewell, and I am a single, disabled, biracial, innovative, creative, badass mother. Shut your mouth. First, I want to thank you for being ready to prosecute the case against 4 more years of that poker-faced, pathological, racist, prolific, lying-ass Donald J. Trump. Senator Kamala Harris, my choice for President of the United States of America. I want you to know I made my kids read the Mueller report so they could know firsthand. These are my kids. And that was their summer reading. They didn't like me much.
They will.
But they're here because they want to be here.
Yeah.
And they've been here since 1:30 in the sun. But my question for you, Madam President, what will you do to address the growing domestic terrorism in this country? It's domestic terrorism,
You're
and
right.
they won't call it what it is.
You're right. You're right. No, you're right. And if, so as Attorney General of California, I used to publish the hate crime reports every year. And across the country, we're seeing a spike in hate crime, and that is domestic terrorism. We are seeing a rise in white nationalism. That is domestic terrorism in the way it is manifesting itself, and we need to speak truth. So let's start with that. We have to speak truth, even when it makes us uncomfortable. Racism is real in this country. Anti-Semitism is real. Homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, these issues are real in our country. And we have to speak truth about it. So let's start there. What will I do? Well, one of the things that I'm acutely aware of is that the President of the United States, probably one of the greatest strengths of the President of the United States, is this thing. The microphone. The microphone that is held by the President of the United States is probably one of the most powerful tools in the world. Because it is here that the President has the power to form perception about issues and to create a standard. These are the things we will say, and these are the things we will aspire to be. And what we have seen in the current occupant of the White House is he has demeaned and belittled and defiled the office of the President of the United States. Truly. Because there has been a failure by this individual to understand that the true reflection of strength is not who you beat down, it's who you lift up. That's the true measure of strength. But because his ego is so fragile, Ooh, it's Saturday night. So part of it is about how we use our voice. It is also about fighting for not only the America we believe in, but painting an image of an America in which everyone can see themselves, right? Part of what is wrong with what we have seen is the use of a power in a way that has been intentionally meant to divide us, to have us pointing fingers at each other. And so the 3 a.m. agenda, okay, so here's the 3 a.m. agenda. It's basically this, right? And it's born in my mind out of my belief and knowledge, true knowledge, that the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And we have to know that and own that in our hearts and in our souls, especially now when so many people are trying to divide us. the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And here's how I know that to be true, based on all of my personal life experiences and what I call 3 o'clock in the morning thought, right? So 3 o'clock in the morning, some people call that the witching hour. But you know what I'm talking about. When you wake up in the middle of the night with that thought that's been weighing on you. Well, for the vast majority of us, when we wake up thinking that thought, it is never through the lens of the party with which we're registered to vote. It is never through the lens of some simplistic demographic some pollster put us in. And for the vast majority of us, when we wake up thinking that thought, it usually has to do with one of just a very few things. Our personal health, the health of our children or our parents. For so many, can I get a job, keep a job, pay the bills by the end of the month, retire with dignity? For our students, can I pay off those student loans? For so many families, can I help my family member get off their opioid addiction or their drug addiction? The vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And I intend to lead with that knowledge in my heart and with that reflected in my words, because we truly are so much better than what we have seen. And we have to have a president of the United States who understands, truly understands who we are as a people, who we really are as a people. And I'll tell you, in traveling our country, we're good. Like, we're good, guys. We're getting out. We have events all over the country. People, the leaders who are here, are showing up shoulder to shoulder with people they've never met, but feeling that sense of community and commonality. We're prepared to show who we really are, and I feel a great sense of optimism about it. But you are right. We have to call it what it is when we see it, because the other point that I will make is this. Whenever that hate, which is what is the source of all of these things that you are mentioning, whenever that hate reveals itself, we must all agree that we must all speak up and speak out. And we must all agree, whomever is the subject of that hate should never be made to fight alone. Let's agree to that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And I think we do have time for just one more question. I want to take it from a student since we're here at a school. So do I have any students with questions? I see a young woman with a green shirt up in the front and the back. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Brahmi. I just graduated high school, and I'm an I'm an incoming student at Emory University in Georgia.
Great.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
So Georgia is one of the many states that has been passing abortion restrictions and abortion bans across the country.
Yeah.
So in light of this recent unfortunate that's been sweeping the country, I was wondering, what do you plan to do about it as president, and what are your thoughts on this?
That's a great question. And congratulations. And enjoy Emory. You're going to meet people from all over the place, and you'll make lifelong friends. So you just go there and just go for it. You're absolutely right. So I was actually in Alabama a few weeks ago. And in Alabama, you mentioned Georgia, and we could talk about Missouri and other states. Alabama passed a law that would punish a doctor with up to 99 years in prison for performing an abortion. There is no question that women's access to reproductive health is under full-on attack around the country. And so, it is not an extreme statement to say this: women will die because of these policies. Women will die, in particular poor women and women of color, because here's the thing: those women are not going to be able to afford to travel right? The cost of travel, the cost of a hotel, the cost of all of that, to go to a place where it is safe and legal and doctor assisted. So we are looking at tragic outcomes. And so part of what we have to do right now is we have to continue to speak up about it. We have to continue to support the folks who are on the ground in those states who are helping those women. We have to support the folks who are, doing the nonprofit legal work and litigating against those laws. But I'm going to tell you what I'm prepared to do as president. All of that work is the work we need to do on the defensive, but I'm also prepared to take this to the offensive as follows. So I was Attorney General of California. I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice. And as president, I will require that for any state that has a history of interfering with a woman's access to reproductive health care, that any law they pass has to be cleared by the United States Department of Justice for constitutionality. And until that law is cleared, it's called pre-clearance. Until that law is cleared, meaning that it is in compliance with Roe v. Wade, it cannot go into effect. That's what I'm prepared to do. But I have to just say to you, see, this is why I feel optimistic. Because we're looking at our leaders and our future is bright. Our future is bright. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator. And I just got the note that we have time for just one more question. I really would like to take another student question. Like I said, we are here. This is an education town hall. We want to keep it student-centered. So I see a hand in the back with a red plaid shirt. If we could have you ask a question. Thank you.
The students are like, I never get to talk.
Good afternoon, Senator Harris. My name is Andrew Sierra, and I am the former student body president for the College of Southern Nevada.
Oh, hi, Andrew. Or Mr. President, yeah.
Thank you, Madam President. In that role, I had to provide calm, steady, and pragmatic leadership regardless of the challenges that came my way or the challenges that I saw.
Yeah.
And many times you would see that students are often starving themselves to save money to be able to pay off for their loans or their textbooks. Or at times they'd be losing their homes or even sleeping in their cars while balancing parenthood. And my question to you is, what do you plan to do in order to tackle these challenges and to decrease the achievement gap between students of color and their counter peers?
Yeah, this is a wonderful question. And thank you for your leadership. So you're absolutely right. I've met many students who, in addition to the stories you shared, are putting off having families, are making really critical life decisions based on their concern that they're not going to be able to pay their student loans off. And unlike when I was in school, when the federal government was running the student loan programs, over the years, that too has been privatized in a way that profit has overtaken the priority around helping people with their education. So we need to deal with it in a number of ways. One, I believe that we need to have free community college, that we need debt-free college, and then loan forgiveness for working families. Not for everybody, but for, Donald Trump's kids don't need it, but but for everybody else. And what we also need to do is allow students to refinance their debt. And we also need to go after the predators in this space, because there are all of these for-profit organizations that are preying on students and selling them loans that they cannot afford, and then jacking up the interest rates to the point that our students will never be able to pay them off. And I think about this issue not only from the context of what you said, which it is just wrong that anyone who wants to pursue an education would be looking at that kind of devastation as a consequence of just trying to get an education. But the other piece of it is this, guys. Back to the earlier point about trade policy. Okay, so there's a lot of talk about China. And there's no question that we need to deal with that, right? We need to deal with the fact that they steal our intellectual property. We need to deal with the fact that they're dumping substandard products into our economy. But here's the other thing that we're not talking enough about. We need to compete. We need to compete. See, part of the thing that just drives me bananas about the current guy in the White House is that he's got us doing all this stuff, right? He's tweeting all the time, talking about that wall that will never get built, right? Doing all this, trying to have working people think that, oh, okay, focus on that. It must be those immigrants that are the problem. Instead of dealing with the fact that we need to invest in the American people, American workers, American jobs, American business, and compete. And so this is one of those issues. We have to invest in the people of our country so that we can compete. Because here's the thing. Even if November of 2016 had turned out differently, we would still be a nation and a world in flux. We would still be looking at the fact that we're seeing around the globe ascending and descending economies. We're looking at population shifts like we've never seen before, in large part because of the climate crisis, which we've not even begun to discuss here. We're looking at the fact that we're in the middle of an industrial and a digital revolution, right? Over the next 15 years, it's estimated that up to 40% of the jobs that currently exist will no longer exist. These are the realities. We need to be investing in the workers of America, in the students of America, so we can compete, because the issue before us, and this gets back to the earlier point, is so much bigger than that guy. It's about the fact that the issue before us truly is what will be our standing? What will be our strength? What will be our definition in this new era of the world? And that's how I think about this. And it is in that context that I think about you and the young people whose stories you shared with us. We have to write the next chapter in a way that is about investing in the people of our country, not only because we need to be able to compete, but because it is just the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for questions, because we want to make sure that we have time for you to take some photos with some of our lovely Nevadans. But thank you so much for coming to Nevada.